This is Radio Romania International. You are listening to our one-hour broadcast in English for listeners in Western Europe and Japan. We can also be heard on the internet at www.rri.ro Channel 1. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter and other social media platforms. Our programs are also available on TuneIn and via satellite Eurosat 16A on 11,512 MHz vertical polarization, azimuth 16 degrees east. Symbol rate 29,950 mega symbols per second, standard DVB-S2, modulation 8 PSK, audio PID 510. We wish you good reception conditions. Hello, this is Daniel Biels with the news. The headlines. In Romania, the total number of COVID-19 infections is drawing close to 1 million, while over 2 million people have received the vaccine so far. The 2020 report on human rights made public by the US State Department points out that Romania lacks efficient mechanisms to investigate and punish police abuse. And one of Romania's most famous research institutes, Cantacuzino, celebrated 100 years on Thursday. President Klaus Iohannis on Thursday announced that in the forthcoming period, Romania would receive a substantial number of anti-COVID doses and the vaccine rollout can be stepped up. The head of state urged Romanians to have confidence in the benefits of immunization. Romania is drawing close to 1 million infections since the start of the pandemic, with over 6,000 cases reported in the past 24 hours alone, and a record high number of patients in intensive care, 1,434. The most cases were reported in Bucharest, but the highest infection rate is in Ilfov County, near the capital city. The death toll is now over 23,500. Meanwhile, over 3 million vaccine doses have been given since the end of December to more than 2 million people. Over 400,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccine are expected to arrive in Bucharest on Friday, the largest quantity Romania has received so far. The US State Department's 2020 report on human rights practices points out that Romania lacks efficient mechanisms to investigate and punish police abuse, and many corruption or abuse cases and in acquittals. According to the document, charges of brutality and cruel, degrading or inhuman treatment brought against several police and gendarme members have been dropped. Violence against women and children is also a serious and continuing problem in Romania, the report also reads. Stay tuned for more after the news. Bucharest on Thursday celebrated 100 years since the Cantacuzino Institute was founded under an order signed by King Ferdinand. Since 2017, the Institute has been subordinated to the National Defense Ministry. Over the years, the institution conducted research in microbiology and related fields, produced vaccines and serums, and was involved in public health care. Cantacuzino Institute works with other prestigious institutes and universities from the world over. Speaking on this event, Romania's Prime Minister Florin Câțu said that the lack of funds, the frequent changes in its management, and the involvement of the political class had nearly brought this famous Romanian research institution on the verge of bankruptcy. The Romanian official recalled that remarkable scientific breakthroughs at international level and incessant efforts made by passionate researchers were the main pillars which enabled this institute to make it through difficult times. In Bucharest and several other cities in Romania, protests continued on Wednesday for the first night in a row against the anti-COVID measures introduced by the authorities. Unlike previous nights on Wednesday, protests were more low-key. Participants chanted anti-government slogans and demanded the lifting of restrictions such as mandatory outdoor face covering, online schooling, and the closing of restaurants and gyms. The authorities argue, however, that the measures are necessary if the accelerated spread of the novel coronavirus is to be curbed. The US President Joe Biden on Wednesday put forth a USD $2 billion investment plan targeting, among others, the creation of jobs and fighting climate change. The American Jobs Plan is an investment in America that will create millions of good jobs, rebuild our country's infrastructure, and position the United States to outcompete China, Biden said. According to the Radio Romania correspondent in Washington, Biden's advisors say the pandemic changed the U.S. citizens' attitude regarding the role of the government and created expectations of unprecedented investments in the reconstruction of the country. And now to end the news bulletin, here is a reminder of the main stories. In Romania, the total number of COVID-19 infections is drawing close to 1 million, while over 2 million people have received the vaccine so far. The 2020 report on human rights made public by the US State Department points out that Romania lacks sufficient mechanisms to investigate and punish police abuse. And one of Romania's most famous research institutes, Cantacuzino, celebrated 100 years on Thursday. And that was the news.
Despite protests against the new restrictions imposed by the Romanian government to curb the spread of the COVID pandemic, the authorities say they have no plans to ease them. I'm Cristina Matescu with this report by Andreea Bojoi. The Romanian authorities are not considering easing current measures taken to limit the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. Prime Minister Florin Câțu explained that these measures were taken because of a recent spike in new cases and ICU admissions. He said Romania has nonetheless the least restrictive measures in the European Union. The new measures will help us overcome this difficult period and reduce the spread of the virus, said Câțu, who explained that the decision wasn't easy and was taken after consultations with healthcare experts, the local authorities and church officials. Florin Câțu.
Am cerut soluții de la specialiști ce putem să facem să încetinim răspândirea virusului o perioadă ca să ne permită nouă să accelerăm campania de vaccinare.
We asked for solutions from specialists so as to slow down the spread of the virus for a while, to allow us to step up the vaccination campaign, because we must all be aware that the only solution to overcome the pandemic is vaccination. These measures will help in the short run, now, this month. And next month, hopefully, we will be able to speed up vaccination. Afterwards, you'll see that things will change. Florin Câțu. This month, Romania is due to receive over 3.3 million vaccine doses, including the new single-shot Johnson & Johnson jab. A new batch of Pfizer and BioNTech vaccine was delivered to Romania on Monday, where the mass vaccination campaign is underway. Over 2 million people have so far been given the jab, of whom half gyms. The authorities say they understand people's frustrations, but that these measures are the only ones that can help contain the virus. Under the new measures, movement at night time is further restricted and shops close earlier depending on the rate of infection in 1,000 residents. corruption, part of the media subordinated to political interests, violence against women are some of the issues highlighted in the U.S. Department of State report on human rights in Romania. I'm Mihaela Ignatescu with more in this report by Leila Kamil. The U.S. Department of State has released its annual report on the human rights situation in the world. The chapter dedicated to Romania in 2020 identifies issues related to cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment, widespread corruption, poor investigation of violence against women, and violence against people with disabilities or members of ethnic minorities. According to the report, the judiciary has made efforts to officially prosecute and convict those who have committed abuses, but the authorities do not have effective mechanisms in place. Some of those who have committed human rights abuses continue to go unpunished. Last year, the document also notes numerous cases of corruption by authorities were reported. Bribery continues to be a common phenomenon in the public sector, especially in the healthcare sector. The National Anti-Corruption Directorate further investigated politicians and government officials. One of the cases mentioned in the report is the bribery case opened against the former Minister of Health and hospital manager Sorina Pintea, who in February 2020 was caught red-handed by anti-corruption prosecutors after taking bribe for an alleged contract for the construction of some hospital wards. According to the U.S. Department of State, several police officers and gendarmes have been acquitted of charges of beating and other cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment, and Romanian citizens generally disrespect the police because they perceive them as corrupt and inefficient. The report also draws attention to the fact that after the 2018 anti-corruption rallies in Bucharest, although some 770 complaints of excessive use of force against peaceful protesters were filed, so far the culprits have not been punished. Violence against women and inconsistency of court decisions are also noted. There are reports of non-governmental organizations showing numerous cases of police officers trying to discourage rape victims from filing a complaint, and sometimes even refusing to file such complaints. Another issue mentioned is that of anti-Semitism, as such behaviors were reported in Romania in 2020. The State Department document mentions the Elie Wiesel Institute for the Study of the Holocaust in Romania, according to which there were cases of naming streets, organizations, schools or libraries after people convicted of war crimes or crimes against humanity. Also, according to the findings of the Elie Wiesel Institute, materials were promoted on the internet to promote anti-Semitic ideas and glorify the Legion, the far right in the Tito period. Regarding the press, the U.S. Department of State notes that the opinions presented are varied, but a number of media outlets are owned or indirectly controlled by people with political ties. Frequently, the news or editorial policies of these media outlets reflect the views of the owner and target political opponents or other media channels. That was Radio Newsreel. Time now for Hit of the Day on Radio Romania International. Listen to VC Imre and his latest hit, Thank You.
When I woke up this morning, realized what I had. I grabbed my guitar, get it all the right time. I grateful and I feel the best you deserve. Cause you could have sustained. Oh, that boy's got some nerve. You could have just ignored me, but instead you said, so many tears and you always had my back. And even if I was lost, you kept me on the right track. You could have just ignored me, but instead you said, I'm a support. Listening to Radio Romania International.
Focus on Romania.
Traveler's Guide.
Hello and welcome to Traveler's Guide. Today's destination is in Transylvania and is laden with history, legend, and traditions. Alba County attracts most tourists with its county seat of Alba Iulia, the city with major, well-preserved monuments, vestiges of millennia-old past. From the urban area, we can then head to the Apusen Mountains. Here you can mountain climb, you can visit special caves, and last but not least, discover traditional village life. Tanika, spokesperson with Alba County Council, told us that we are talking about one of the most attractive counties of Romania.
Un potențial turistic deosebit se remarcă atât din punct de vedere al peisajului de o frumusețe aparte, cât și din punct de vedere al istoriei, al culturii.
Alba County, with a great tourist potential, first of all stands out with its scenery, its special beauty, and its history, culture, traditions, and customs. As a result, we have here a lot of types of tourism, like cultural and historical, green tourism, religious, and of course, mountain tourism. If we are talking about cultural and historical tourism, we have to start with the city of Alba Iulia. The Alba Carolina fortification, the most representative Vauban fort in Romania, and one of the most important in Europe, is the city's main attraction, as well as the county's. Annually, tens of thousands of tourists visit the fortification, and they come in troves in any season. The change of the guard, the tour of the fortifications, the statues, or the obelisk for Fora, Kloșca, and Crișan are only some of the attractions, to which you have to add the Roman festivals and open-air shows. The main objective is the Coronation Cathedral, next to which we find the St. Michael Roman Catholic Cathedral. Also there, tourists can visit the National Grand Union Museum and the Hall of the Union, recently refurbished. A totally special building as historical significance goes for Romanians. We also have the Museikon, the only museum in Romania dedicated to icons, and the Bachianean Library. The cultural attractions in Alba County are spread all around. Tanika continues.
În același registru putem merge mai departe la plaj, unde ar trebui să deschidem lista în Câmpia Libertății, continuând cu Palatul Arhiepiscopal, o construcție de secol III.
In the same register, we get to Blaj, where we have to open the list with the Field of Freedom, a very dear place to all Romanians. Then we have to continue with the Archbishop Palace, a 12th century building, the Palace of Culture, and the Botanical Garden. which opened in 1881, the oldest botanical garden in the world, initially set up as part of a secondary school. Ayyud is also a major culture center. Alba County has a major concentration of nationally important historical documents. The list, published in 2015, contains 686 items. The fortification in Kapulna, the easternmost of the Daisen forts in Orishtia Mountains, and the König rural site, in the category of Saxon sites with fortified churches in Transylvania, are historical monuments listed by UNESCO on their World Heritage List of sites. There are efforts being made to also put on the list the Meta and the Roshia Montana sites. In the countryside, we have a whole group of rural sites in terms of original architecture, such as Arieshin, Gurda, Lida, Abramian, Albak, Mogosh, Pomor, or Ramlet, famous and very colorful from this point of view. At the same time, the scenery in Alba Iulia is remarkable with its harmony, says Violeta Nica, spokesperson with Alba County Council.
Sunt peisaje naturale pitoresce, reprezintă o ofertă bogată și variată. Întâlnim peșteri, stânci, cascade, chei, masive muntoase. Aș putea să vă amintesc doar câteva
The
dintre
natural scenery
acestea.
presents a rich and varied offer, with caves, crans, waterfalls, gorges, mountain massives. And here we have to recall Riparoshi, Cheila Rumetului, and Cheila Iudului, and the Tunatele. The Scărișoara Glacier is a European nature reserve. Other major objectives for Murmureș, which Alba County Council wants to turn into a top-notch resort. There would also be Bucănița in Arieș Valley, and the golf course at Pianu, the biggest in the country. Over 25% of the country's territory has nature reserve status. This is the foundation on which we developed our green tourism. One of the remarkable projects undertaken by Alba County Council to develop tourism is a restoration of a county-level road that goes through isolated communities in the Upper Sun Mountains, unlocking spectacular scenery.
Vorbim aici despre Transalpina de Apuseni. Drumul pleacă din Aiud până în satul Bucium, străbat de curmi de peste 1000 de metri altitudine.
This would be the Apuseni Transalpina, going from Aiud to the village of Bucium, crossing 1,000 meters altitude places. This road would reproduce the medieval circuit of the Mochantri, and is a road with a lot of potential. It is a road of life, linking authentic traditional communities. It is also a road of culture, and at the same time one of history, partially covered in the old Roman gold trail, and a road of faith. The tableau could be completed by food and wine tourism, and here is where the Wine Country project comes in. The available accommodation units for tourists have gone up in number almost 3 times in the last 10 years, reaching over 6,000, concentrated in the opposite area. You've been listening to Travelers.
Coming up next, Generation 3.0. Welcome everyone, I'm Vlad Palku. The League of Romanian Students Abroad this weekend organized the 12th edition of its gala, on which occasion it announced the names of the 12 winners of the League of Romanian Students Abroad prizes for academic excellence. The event was pre-recorded at the Recent Art Museum in Bucharest and broadcast online on the organization's social media profiles on Sunday, March 28th. The head of the communication department and vice president of the League of Romanian Students Abroad, Roxana Angurenuș, told us more. This year's gala marked a few milestones. First of all,